recently in my life, somebody very dear to me this year has gone through a lot of health struggles. And so it's been an interesting journey to face. It's one thing to face it in yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's its own journey, obviously. And anyone who knows me or has listened to some of this podcast may know that, I have had my journey with health and all that struggle and stuff. And it's been an interesting dichotomy of bringing all that wisdom and passion and now being the strongest I've ever been in my life.
Mm.
Hormonally, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like I'm the strongest I've ever been in my body. There's a lot of ways. So that dichotomy of my own journey with all my strength and then somebody very dear to me that in multiple areas of my life is extremely meaningful um, to face, sometimes feeling I have a huge impact and I do have some control, as much of that may be actually an actual facade. Maybe more control is more than that is impact, influence, that I can do something.
Mm.
And at the same time being faced with that side where it's like, well, surrender, faith, acceptance, trust, and then there's just a limit of anything I can say, and supplements, all the alternative therapies I know when I teach, all these things like, are you doing this? You're doing saunas, cold plunges. Are you doing fasting? Are you taking all the supplements? You're doing that with discipline, and blending the clinical traditional world and then the alternative treatments and how you look at that. And so it's been on my mind a lot, and I think it's a very interesting thing because it's not an overnight thing. It's not like an accident. It's not like someone, just died and I have to deal with the grief. It's this ongoing battle of it's always there, a little bit comes and oh, now it's completely gone. Oh, and now it's back, and now you're having to face with it, and then that roller coaster that's been has made me think a lot recently just about life and death,
Mm.
and like the how fragile this all is.
Yeah.
So curious what your thoughts are.
It's been fascinating in a similar way. I mean, it's different relationships, but mutual friend, and just going through that cycle again. I'm in a very different place than internally, mentally, physically, and even spiritually than I was last time. I had a family member or a close friend going through something physical. It was intense, and it feels like it's where a lot of my curiosity has been. It's like the landscape internally just feels really different than it has before, and also really different than my own health struggles, journeys that overcoming um, intense physical scenarios, health wise, but years ago. And so
Yeah.
there's kind of a detachment from like, what was I thinking then? What was I going through then? How did I show up for that? How did I process that? Um, and getting to sit with a friend through that
Mm.
and observe that, participate with that, be present in that, and the all the different emotions and thoughts that come up with that, like not just how to show up for them, but the deeper questions of like, what is the best way to show up this? How do you, to what you were speaking of, like there's so many points of view, so many books, so many podcasts, so many doctors that even have very different modalities or plans or mindsets on how to show up around health. And I keep coming back to like thinking about how do we best honor like our spirit and our truth and our this this energetic side of us that I believe is much deeper than this physical reality. Linguistically I don't know what shape that takes or, have clear names for that. And I'm not trying to separate out anybody's different beliefs, but just knowing that there is a lot more happening here than what is happening with our physical body. How much weight do we give what is happening with our physical body? And because it does matter, but it's not everything. And so like just that harmony, if there is one at times, when things get tenuous on
Hmm.
the physical side. Uh, I think when the reality of our the fragile nature of our existence is observable.
Mm.
Like it is always present. We know that. Everyone knows that.
Hmm.
But it's something we keep pretty consistently buried or down or out of our,
Yeah,
or
pretending it's
trying
not
to keep
there.
out of our field of vision and
Anti-aging cream, surgeries, all these things.
whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Taking down the mirrors in your house so you don't see yourself. I mean,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. That's funny.
That was more of a joke. There might be people that do that.
People do that. Actually, I've heard about that. That's funny.
There's a lot of things we do to try to not let that enter our mind. And then there's scenarios in life that just put us right up against it.
Mm,
And it's it almost feels touchable. Like
mm,
that layer, that barrier in between this life and just that the desire to cling and hang on to um this physical part of it. Like what is that harmony? What is that balance? Um and there doesn't seem to be a clear answer.
mm.
Um, Not one that I've found in my own life, and not really one that I've been able to observe recently in a friend's life either. Just that in itself is a journey, not a formula.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It's like the fluidity of which maybe intuitively or maybe I'm more of a logical person, maybe it's more value, like which one just in the moment feels like the right approach to take.
Mm.
And I'm that's been something that I even had a conversation yesterday around this topic of my warrior came out. It's like I find, okay, I'm like, sometimes I go more in the magician, like a Joe Dispenza approach of, man, we're going to use energy, we're going to use our consciousness, we're literally with like the subconscious mind and superconscious and hypnotic states and belief. I'm going to believe this disease or this ailment away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then on the other times, I go in a full warrior mode and I'm just like, fuck this. Now I'm going to annihilate and destroy anything that stands in the way. And it's something I was saying yesterday. I'm like, you know, there's a level of success, a level of things at play that when that gets to a level of discomfort based on whatever would be happening, then my warrior comes out.
Mm.
And I think that's interesting because some people, a lot of people I hear, they say, we have to fight cancer, we have to fight this, we have to fight disease, we have to fight all these things, these ailments. And other people are more like, I don't want to fight. Like that, more of that peaceful, like a hypnotherapy, like a meditative, a prayer, more of a divine energy space of just like use the power of my mind. And I think on those sides of the spectrum, I find myself, very much oscillating.
Yeah.
And I think neither's wrong. And I think if you can do all of that, it's amazing. But I think, it's like whether you're oscillating between like, I'm going to fight today or I'm going to fight right now. And then I got night or tomorrow, I'm going to be more peaceful. Or I think there is a good way to combine those where there isn't a level of anger, there isn't a level of like dysregulated, duh, I'm just gonna fight this, and we're like totally neurotic about it. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm just gonna think positive thoughts and this thing that's very serious potentially, it's just gonna go away. I think it's like, no, I'm gonna have discipline. I'm going to do everything I can with the subconscious mind, with different tools of prayer, God, divinity, universal power, meditation, belief, all those things. And I'm going to use that, and that's very powerful. It isn't, oh, I'm just going to think these things away. It's like, no, this is very powerful. And food, diet, alternative therapies, clinical traditional medicines, all that, like, just everything. And I think that isn't just when we're either faced with death or we're in a
Mm.
serious situation. I think the beauty is this can actually get really simple in everyday life, is showing up like, not this is the last day of my life and I'm just going to act willy-nilly, but I'm going to have a level of grace. discipline, compassion, focus, and clarity. I'm not going to hide, and I don't need to react. But it's like that balance of realism versus dreams, I guess. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how else to articulate that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious what you think about that because I think it's very important and it's something I embody more than ever in my life.
Yeah.
It's coming up a lot because of, my mutual friend.
Yeah.
How can I best show up?
I like that. I'd have to say that in some fashion, like where I feel like I end up most is some version of that. And that it doesn't have to be any of those one directions to the exclusion of the other.
Right?
It's like
Yeah.
how can we show up in the most authentic, healthy way for ourselves? And I love what kind of the reframe you had there too. Like this isn't just about when we're right up against that veil of death, and like this is I'm going to act this way now, to try to push that away. It's like let's step back and try
Yeah.
to show up in life that way. Make these habits about being here and being present,
Yeah.
um, for whatever this time period or moment or experience is. And I feel like that feels way more grounded. That feels way
Mm.
more stable.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like a space and an energy you can live in and practice, not chase
Mm.
and or try to beat away. It's not a
Yeah.
defensive or an offensive move. It's a being present and showing up in that, and that may mean traditional medicine. That may mean taking steps that are more profound, or even things that are I don't want to say risky, but more exploratory.
Mm.
And I think that's
Mm.
a wild thing on a spectrum too. There's so many people in the world. It's like there's is this a technique or something that's been done a million times? Has it been done 500,000 times? Is it done 100,000 times? Is it, 7 people have done it? Like there's so much variation in between. Like this has been practiced and we know this works.
Mm.
Um, and just entrusting and following that in the leading, the gut, the intuition. Um, and yet, like, as I think about all these things, internally I keep coming back to the importance of remaining present in our lives, like how easy it is to become distracted
Mm.
by what could be titled fighting for life, or battling for your health, or
Yeah.
you know doing all these things that are steps toward that. How distracted we can actually become by doing those things that we're not
Being.
actually living our
Mm.
life and being
Yeah.
ourselves, for what can be,
Mm.
final seasons of life, or final few seasons of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've seen that happen a lot, and that's internally I've been very conscious that there has to be another way,
Mm.
besides losing yourself in that struggle
Yeah.
for the physical existence.
Like it take on its own form almost, and then it just
Yeah.
consumes people, and they get all distracted, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I feel like that's wild too, because even if they are still physically living, like
Mm.
they're not actually in their lives how they want to be. They're not showing up for themselves first, or the people around them in the way that the reason they even want to be here, the reason any of us want to be here, the things that do bring us joy and delight and wonder.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and again, I feel like that's a fascinating piece of this mixture.
Yeah.
Again, like, it doesn't in any way feel linear, like, as much as I want it to be.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's not like
Yeah.
this portion of this portion of that. It's like the perfect blend.
Mhm.
Like, well,
I think that's part of the beauty and the much more of a past frustration of mine, but now it's more of just a humorous or just fun thing. Is like, yeah, there is no recipe,
yeah,
and I think I've loved to just in life with the social media and all these self-help gurus out there, especially being in the self-help industry myself, is everyone's trying to give a formula. Everyone's trying to give a 10 step, a 7 step, a 3 step. And there's like, it's different for everybody
Mm-hmm.
hormonally, all these things, your past. And it's like, there's tools that work, you know, but to your point, it isn't a clear recipe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a daily thing. And I think too, it just also reminds me of, God, man, like my gratitude for the shadow side of life.
Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
not evil. I want to be very clear. That's not evil. That's not wrongdoing. I mean shadow in the sense of the things, the pain that we often run from. Like I've said it many times before. And when you have people that are close to you, for me, having someone close to me who's been had pulled off miracles and
Mm-hmm.
had um, very emotionally demanding struggles with life, is I'm so grateful for what pain, suffering, potential danger, or death. It's like it forces you to focus.
Mm.
It to me it not maybe not others, but to me because of my value system, my experience, like it almost forces me, Dustin. If you're getting too excited or focused, and maybe you're working too much, slow down, pay more attention. And that's one of the gifts of the chronic disease that I've had, is I've had that training
Mm.
of a 14-year marathon of you know success, fun, whatever. Life gets a little easier at times from hard work or whatever it is. You have a win, and it's like that daily reminder of, dude, come back. It's
Mm.
fragile. It's fragile. And I think that's a wisdom piece that typically older people have, due to time, or people that have had faced a big struggle. And so I think it's like, from my own journey and then seeing someone I care very much about, I'm really enjoying both sides of that. Of like, there's so much fun stuff
Yeah.
in my career. I'm healthier, stronger than ever. I have more energy than ever. So I want to do more. I want to achieve more. I want to, I work out harder at the gym. I'm more social, and also really enjoying my alone time. But then this whole thing in the mix is like, God, yeah, but dude, don't forget that other side, man.
Mm.
It's very important, and I think it builds so much character and so much just empathy. And I think it gets back to what we've talked about before. It's like that invisible force that as humans, I believe, are almost addicted to, like catnip, and sometimes we can't even pinpoint what it is. And I think that's compassion, empathy, gratitude, and people that are like on a subconscious level, like soul to soul. I'm
Yeah.
with you. I see you. You're not alone. And to me, I think that's one of the greatest gifts.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I love what you brought up about the shadow side of
mm,
life, of self. And I think there's we talk about friction a lot as it connects to learning, to growth or whatever. And I feel like that's so connected to the shadow side of life. Like
yeah.
that's it, an alternate. Actually, I think that's probably a poor description of it. It's not an alternate side of us. Like it's a side of us that we don't love and struggle with. Like
Yeah.
it's not other. It's still a part of us. And and then when I zoom back from that and think about like just the shadow aspects of life,
Mm,
and I feel like sickness, disease, or poor health, all those things are really connected to that as far as how we treat it, how we show up in it as a culture, as individuals, trying to act like it's not a thing
yeah.
until it is, and then even when it is, you know, we try to change it or manipulate it, or how we talk about it, who we tell it's even going on. I think that's a wild
Mm,
and very interesting thing too, like
mm,
um how private we often keep health struggles and
mm,
stuff, and not a right or wrong, just it's very curious um how that's often something that we don't receive support or help on because it's something we're hiding, maybe even from ourselves. Like maybe it's
yeah.
ideas around, the more I talk about it, the more I bring it into existence, or have to deal with it or have other people feel sorry for me, like whatever that.
Potential
Um,
shame or just,
yeah,
yeah,
but it's heavy,
yeah, yeah,
and culturally heavy, and obviously I'm most familiar with our culture. I'm really interested in how that shows up other places.
hmm,
But there's so much charge around how we're showing up physically and our own health. And I keep coming back to, the overall, or not overall, it's probably not the best way to say it, but the deeper reality as I see it is like our being and our spiritual health is, I want to say more important, but just a much deeper layer. There's just more going on there. And I think often in my life anyway, my experiences when there has been intense physical struggle, it's greatly participated in my ability to connect to the spiritual
yeah,
and have lessons there,
yep,
have connection there, have grace there, have
amen,
um, depth of myself that uh, I would not have known through another way.
amen.
Um, and so there's like that holding of that piece too. It's like there's the shadow aspects of life that just are friction. But how do we love that and
Mm,
continue to be here now too? And I think that's an aspect of what we were talking about earlier linguistically when
mm,
you were saying battle or fight
mm,
and like that warrior side.
mm-hmm,
I think there's an immense amount of beauty to that. And, you know, traditionally, historically, through multiple spiritual traditions, like that idea of battling and fighting, um, whether that be spiritual, emotional,
mm-hmm,
physical health, like shows up again and again.
mm,
And yet for me, where I am right now, there's still like there's an incongruence with it. And
mm,
I don't know what that's from. Like that could be my own stuff. That could be my own baggage for
mm,
sure. But I wonder about the at times that fight and battle seem detached from loving what is. They seem detached from like accepting the this is here. This is in my reality.
mm,
I want to make
interesting.
choices and choose other.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I'm not suggesting like uh, accepting it like this is the reality as I want it to be, like, but loving what it is and still desirous of another. And there's, for some reason in me, there's conflict in between those two ideas and that
mm,
battle and that fight. And I'm not sure there actually is a conflict there if it's, you know,
hmm.
something I'm dealing with.
That's very interesting.
But it's really curious to me as I've sat with this
Yeah.
these last months.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, man. And I know we're tight on time today, so we'll have to
Mm,
wrap up soon. But I love what you said there, and I want to respond to that. Because in getting to know you, I've seen how those nuances between us play out. And I
mm,
think what's one thing that I love that I think is what brought us together, one of the things in this lifetime, and what has given us a natural ability to have the level of rapport we do is because of the serious physical and also therefore spiritual, mental, emotional battles or struggles or challenges or very serious things we went through at a young age. And it formed us in a way that's typically beyond the average of our years for
mm.
most people our age. We're not the same age, but we're kind of close. Um, so I think that's a pretty cool starting point of like there. I heard you say that. I'm like, yeah, like that. There's very interesting things at play there. And still, whether it's baggage, whether it's just values, or whether it's just a preference, I'm not sure. But I have noticed that we do have different ways to approach things typically there.
Mm,
I more go into like warrior mode, and you're more see me. Tell me if I'm right here. I don't
mm.
want to speak for you, but it's like kind of that more kind of let
Yeah.
it be, let it be thing. Perfect. What's interesting about that as well is I have oscillated
Mm.
between these two,
I've seen that.
right?
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like if I go to reference the book King, Warrior, Lover,
Mm.
Magician, neither is inherently bad,
Right.
I love tapping into all of them. That works for me. And there is an interesting piece for me where almost I was afraid to go into my warrior
Hmm.
due to cultural things at play.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of other reasons I could probably think of, but I just think it's interesting. I have empathy and I also see like a difference as well, where for me, it's like sometimes I go really, really magician. That would
Hmm.
be me like doing subconscious meditation and prayer and deep trance hypnotherapy stuff. And sometimes I'm more king, kind of seeing the warrior, the magician, and the lover energies, like the whole
Yeah.
spectrum, like what I want to choose from. And then sometimes, and this is where I can't maybe articulate it clearly right now on the spot, but that warrior, for whatever reason, comes out, and it's like some threshold has been hit, and whether that's the male testosterone side of me, or maybe that's more my spirit, or maybe that's how I've been conditioned in this lifetime, not sure. But I'm just like, I feel really, really congruent in that warrior energy.
Hmm.
But it isn't warrior like reactive, you know, super intense. It's like, where do I need to allocate my warrior? And it can just be minutes, it can be moments, it can be warrior energy of my consciousness, it can be warrior energy and how I use my physical body to protect or make something happen, take action. um so those are the nuances. I mean, how I see it being evolving for me in that realm, where there was many years I was, I think, a lot more empathetic to what I think you're saying. Is just I was averse to it. I was very averse to it, and I can't fully explain why I'm not as averse to it as I used to
Hmm.
be. Um, I don't think either's right or wrong.
Right.
I'm just aware of the difference, and I think it's fascinating. Like, especially for anybody listening, like what part of that resonates?
Yeah.
Is anything uncomfortable there? If you're like, oh, that's totally me. If it brings up a question, an
Yeah.
idea, some self-reflection could be cool. But before we wrap up, anything else you want to share? Or-
And just in line with that,
Yeah.
it feels very phasal
Mm.
in ways like, or cyclical, or that there is an evolution and a waxing and a waning, like to those different energies. And I do think in a healthy consciousness, emotionally and mentally, and someone is clear in those ways, like we have the ability to be fluid in how we show up in those different energies. And
Hmm.
whether that be um, yeah, warrior, king, lover, magician, as far as the masculine archetypes anyway. And I think my comfortability or ease or connection to those has and is shifting. And I'm just still really curious of how these relate to showing up in the now as it, relates to our physical being. And that, yeah, this is a fascinating subject. And thanks for, again, just kind of connecting on this, because it's something we've both been uh, talking about for sure, but internally it's just very consistent, uh, on loop in a way,
Mm.
and just sitting with it, being with it.
Right. Well, thank you for your time today. It's so nice you're here in person again.
Yeah.
We're at my office
Yeah, this is great.
in Newport, so playing with different camera angles and stuff. So it's fun. But
Always learning.
yeah, man. Thank you. Cheers.
You too.